Samsung skips the Note 6 to deliver a phablet from the future. Or it could just be a name change. Pebble smashes its Kickstarter goal, but should companies be allowed to use Kickstarter as a pre-order platform? We get a much better look at the OnePlus 3, and our own Jaime Rivera is in China now playing with the ZTE Axon 7. All that and listener mail. So make sure you're charged and ready for episode 202 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Well, this weekly podcast is where we dissect and discuss those gadgets that make our lives mobile. Smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It's all the stuff you wished existed when you were a kid getting Nintendo thumb over your summer vacation. I'm Juan Bagnell, senior editor at Pocketnow.com, blasting the signal from sunny Southern California. Now, rounding out this techie trio, we're joined again by senior editor
at
Pocketnow.com, Mr. Adam Doud. Good afternoon, sir.
The partner that won't go away. Yes.
No, I was actually I actually meant to ask you before we jumped in when we were in the pre-show, because I looked you up again. You need to change your page on Pocketnow.com because you're still a contributing editor.
I'm not even sure I know how, but I mean, like, Pocketnow is basically like the startup of news organizations. Job titles don't mean anything.
Well, but, you know, you corrected me last week. I wanted to make sure I got it right this week. And podcast producer Jules Wang, out on the East Coast. How's it going out there, sir?
You always get it right, Juan. You always get it right.
I'm batting like 60% on butchering your name, and it's like the easiest name out of the entire team.
You're doing all right. If you're doing above 0.4, I think that's good. That's what Teddy Williams did. So good job.
Good call. So yeah, I mean, we can round that up to a solid win. The time on the West Coast, ladies and gentlemen, is 11 a.m. So let's talk some tech. Woo!
Boom.
So folks, we have a really cool sponsor set up this week. In that the sponsor for this week's show, I'm sort of fudging my script here because I'm trying to reach for something, and I had the suction cup on this camera stuck to my table, and I couldn't get it off my table. But this week's sponsor is Sioeye, and Sioeye is producing this really killer little 4G-enabled action camera. And so we're seeing a number of these products start filtering into the market right now. Sioeye, to my knowledge, is one of the first to have a real proper consumer-facing solution for a little action camera that has its own SIM card. So you can connect it directly to Sioeye's streaming service, share that on Twitter and Facebook, and you can stream your action sports adventures in real time using this little setup. They were our sponsor last week. They're joining us again this week. They're really interested in getting this message out for dads and grad season. You know, Father's Day is coming up, and kids are getting out of school. And so as people are going on summer vacations, if you want to share your events with family and friends, this might be a product you would want to check out. So specs on this thing are pretty crazy. It's a UHD capable camera. It shoots 4K video at 30 frames per second or 1080p at up to 120 frames per second. For those of you who want that really tasty, crisp, slow motion action. And one of the things that I think is super interesting about this setup is that this is an Android device. So it's running a build of, I think it's running a build of KitKat or Jelly Bean. It's 4.4. So it's running a build of KitKat. And that's what I think is kind of curious. If a little action camera like this can shoot 120 frame per second 1080p video, and this thing is obviously not running like the most powerful Qualcomm 820 processor, how come our phones can't do that? That's kind of crazy. It's nuts.
It's just, it's just pushing the fragmentation that much further. So. But
you said the F word.
I know, but no, this is one of those devices that it's not a phone. It's okay. I mean, as long as it gets the job done, that's what's important.
Well, yeah, but that's what I think is so curious, is that this is not a phone. It obviously doesn't have the most robust, phone chipset, and it doesn't have the biggest battery. And so now we have this really tangible benefit for having a standalone device, and that it does have these really killer camera capabilities. But one of the cool things about their partnership on the podcast this week is they're offering up a promo code for listeners on this podcast. If you want to grab a Sioeye Iris 4G of your very own, if you head over to Sioeye.com and use promo code POCKETNOW at checkout, you'll save yourself $30 off the purchase price of your very own UHD capable action sports wireless 4G LTE enabled action camera. the Iris 4G. So we want to thank them for participating on the show, for sponsoring the show, helping us keep the lights on here. And if you guys want to grab some cool gear, maybe send this to your dad for Father's Day, or send this to your grad child who's leaving school and you'll be an empty nester and you want to see what they get up to in college. You probably don't want to see what they'll get up to in college. And this might be a product that you guys want to check out.
Well, what was interesting about the promo video that I just played was that this guy was doing all the BMX stuff, and just a whole bunch of people, the camera was just focused on their facial features, like contorting in different reactions. It's just all this, ooh, ah.
Well, that's how intense it is, you see.
Yeah.
That's what makes it totes exciting.
Yeah.
And that's why we're stoked to have them on board. Use that promo code Pocketnow and check out Sioeye 4G. They're being really kind to us, so we're stoked to play ball with them.
Awesome.
And so let's get into some actual news. How's about?
Well, not before we tell viewers how to, or listeners how to write us in. Maybe
Good save,
give us
Jules.
some
Why don't you
little feedback?
I'm obviously not up to the task.
I think you're a little tired today. Maybe just take a little second, rest up while I tell our people, our good people, that you can always head us up when we're live. Just go to the YouTube page, and then there should be a little bar that says Hangouts. Join our Hangouts right now, and you can enter that and hit up a question on the Q&A tab, and have people upvote your question, because we would really like to see that, and that's how you get those questions so that we can see them. And yeah, you can do that, or you can head on over to your email and type up podcast@pocketnow.com. You can write us in anytime, and yeah, we'll be able to answer some of your questions that way too.
Boom. That's how you do it, folks, because we want to hear from you. That's how we kind of keep engaged in this show. It also just kind of helps keep the podcast feeling fresh. So we're going through all of these shenanigans and these hijinks so that we can interact with you guys and see what it is that you all are interested in seeing and having us talk about. So now, properly jumping into the news. Boom. So right off the bat, we've got a little blip of a story here that I was surprised to see actually got some really heavy traffic on Pocketnow.com. And it's just a naming situation, as far as I can tell, that Samsung might be skipping over the Note 6 to instead give us a Note 7 at the in the second half of this year. I mean, that's just a label change, though, right?
Speaking of job titles don't mean anything, do phone labels mean anything? I mean, in this case, it's one of those things. It kind of makes sense. They're both being, both the S7 and the Note whatever is being released in the same year, so you don't want to have that perception that the phablet flagship is in any way inferior. Yeah. So honestly, just go ahead and make it the 7. A year from now, no one will care.
I think a month from now, very few people.
Right, and it'll be one of those questions that like job interviewers ask interviewees for like tech news. Say, so what'd you think about that Note 6? And then if they try to answer, then you got them.
I think 7 is just a sexy number. I mean, when Huawei decided to make the sequel to their Ascend Mate 2 4G LTE, gotta get the whole name right.
Yeah, absolutely. On AT&T,
they went up to Ascend Mate 7. Was the next version, and then what else? I mean, we have I don't mean to spoil things, but the ZTE Axon, that just went up to 7 too. So 7's just that number. You have those angles, you have those little lines. It's just an awesome number in design.
Yeah, and it's becoming the next one phone, where every phone was a one device for a while.
Why didn't HTC take advantage of this?
HTC really put out a one device of their own. I think that would have helped their brand ID. So I totally agree with you, though, Adam. I think this is a smart branding philosophy, especially since the Galaxy S7 Edge has already been released. It's weird having a 7 phablet and a 6 phablet in the same year. Yeah. But I was just kind of curious. Like, people really seemed to light up on this story that this naming change was somehow more significant, or that was a bigger deal. So just kind of curious to see all of those numbers on the website for the traffic going to this story.
Well, it's Samsung, so it's huge. And awesome.
It's the
And
next
7.
big thing.
It's
So
the next big thing.
And for it being such a big thing, I think we're done talking about it.
Absolutely.
One of the big topics that I thought was really interesting over this last week was Pebble. Pebble launching another Kickstarter for the Pebble Time 2, the Pebble 2, and the Pebble Core. And I feel they have purposely set their Kickstarter goals low so that they can develop those headlines that
sure.
Pebble smashes Kickstarter goals. So, I mean, we can talk about the watches too, but I think immediately one of the first questions that I want to get your guys' opinion on is, should Kickstarter continue to be used by major companies or larger companies as a pre-order or pre-sales platform, as opposed to this spirit of Kickstarter being a way to launch products that otherwise, crowdfund products that wouldn't have gotten approved by other manufacturers?
Right. Well, I mean, I think in general, Pebble has a sort of tradition with Kickstarter. Going back to the original Pebble, that's how the original Pebble was launched on Kickstarter. And when they brought the Pebble, the steel and the time steel, they kept reiterating over and over, we're coming to Pebble because that's where our roots are. But at the same time, you're a mature company at this point. I mean, you've been developing smartwatches. You're arguably one of the pioneers of smartwatches, or at least mainstream smartwatches. Develop your own system now. I mean, it's you're a big boy now. You can come and sit at the big boys table and have your own online store. You don't have to go. You don't have to go through Kickstarter anymore. I see why they're doing it, but to me, it's honestly just kind of a lazy way out.
You don't have to do it, but I mean, Kickstarter is just another financing option as opposed to much more strenuous terms with angel investors, venture capital, et cetera, et cetera. I think that they're able to exploit a very excited audience that has been following their progress through the years. So, hey, why not keep on the Kickstarter train?
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible that they wouldn't get nearly the turnout if they launch on a different platform. Like, let's say for whatever they went crazy and they decided to go Indiegogo instead of Kickstarter. I honestly think there would be a decline in sales just because it wasn't Kickstarter. But no, I'm not trying to knock Indiegogo. I'm just saying Kickstarter, with its reputation, with Pebble, the two kind of work hand in hand. So I mean, it's possible that maybe they've got market analysis that says if we don't launch on Kickstarter, we're only going to sell 3 million as opposed to 6 million. I don't know.
No, I totally believe this is a numbers justified, and Kickstarter definitely has the lion's share of the public awareness for how crowdfunding projects work, and you do get that bump in social media traffic because Kickstarter does an excellent job of leveraging other social media platforms for sharing and disseminating projects. I just think there's something a little obvious about it at this point. We've got 33 days to go. I just looked it up. The Kickstarter is well over $8 million when they had a goal of $1 million.
Right.
And we knew, I mean, like that $1 million goal was broken, I think, within the first hour of the project being live. So we all know that they're playing this game. They know that we know that they're playing this game.
And we know that they know that we know.
We can just keep going down the rabbit hole on that. But, I kind of feel like after a point, like this kind of takes away from some of the discussion of the actual product, too. I mean, we're looking at the next generation of Pebble Time smartwatches. I'm a very proud Pebble devotee since the first generation product, and I love my Pebble Time.
Yeah.
But, we're writing headlines about Kickstarter. We're writing headlines about sales goals. We're writing later, articles about the machine behind Pebble, and we kind of get around, like this conversation here, we kind of get around to talking about the smartwatches after all that.
Right. It's funny. I had the same conversation with my podcast partners on the techbeard.com. But anyway, and I was saying, boy, I'd really like to get my hands on a Pebble Time 2. I wonder if I could sell my Pebble Time. And the one guy, Cliff, is like, why? You have a Pebble Time. Why would you want a Pebble Time 2? I mean, all it has is a heart sensor, and that's really the main difference. And I'm just like, you know what? It's a good point. Maybe it's just because it was on Kickstarter. So,
but it creates that kind of it creates
energy,
that buzz, that desire. Like we get interested in these things, and there's a positive association to those things. I think that's actually a pretty big idea, especially in light of like recent stories like Fitbit may or may not have accurate heart rate sensing capabilities built into their smartwatches. I feel like Fitbit's probably on the right side of that conversation, and other people are trying to make their products seem less reliable than they really are. But there are very few products in the smartwatch landscape that are as truly water resistant, have the same kind of battery life, and now adding a 24/7 heart rate monitor to the equation when it's something very difficult to do on Android Wear or the Apple Watch without destroying your battery life is an interesting solution. Like those are the whole thing about Pebble is that there isn't anything that's mind-blowing about the Pebble experience. It's that it's a very measured and conservative approach to serving notifications and small pieces of interactions to your wrist, and it does so with the best possible screen for outdoor viewability, and it does it with crazy long battery life. So you're not going to get anything that's just going to blow you away, moving from a Pebble Time to a Pebble Time 2. But seeing those little updates, like the heart rate monitor, was enough for me to go, yeah, I kind of need to push the button on this.
All right. I didn't, but okay. I contemplated it. I thought about it. I went to Swappa and I said, how much are they getting for times these days?
Probably not much, right? Like
no, it's like $60-$70.
I was gonna say like $20 and a half a ham sandwich.
But if I want to go from my time to a Pebble 2, selling on Swappa, it's only an extra $20-$30. That's not awful.
So I got in on the early birds. So what the Pebble Time 2 was gonna be $169.
Yeah.
So the tradition that we have in my household right now is my wife is currently using my first generation Pebble, and she really likes it. So now I was like, well, I think I have to push a button on this. It's a little, it's $170, but it's not too bad. It's not too expensive. And she goes, okay, fine, but I get your Pebble Time. So
right.
Win-win.
Yeah.
I don't even have to try and sell it. This is awesome.
Exactly. It's always awesome when you get that permission slip.
You hand her down your tech. I mean, really.
Yeah, it seems to be a good hand-me-down. I just got a new laptop, and now she's like, well, I need your old Lenovo. And you're like, okay, that's great.
Done.
We've been looking at trying to get her a new laptop, too, and she was playing around with a Windows tablet for a while. She was like, nah, I need a better keyboard. Like, well, Lenovo. Yeah, that's going to be great.
You two are meant for each other.
Oh, you know what? I every day I reflect on how lucky I am that she picked me.
Aww.
So, moving right along. Let's get this set up here. So, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this just because, again, it was just sort of a... I don't know what this is. It's like a tease. It's a leak. It's
it's a something.
It's a something.
It's a teak.
It's a teak. We have a much better look at the OnePlus 3. And this is now in all its glory. This doesn't look like a dummy or a mock-up. We were pretty confident we know what the specs on this bad boy are going to be. And a lot of people are commenting that this kind of just looks like an HTC clone.
A little bit. And actually, I think this is more of a confirmation that the leaks that we saw before were
accurate.
Legit, or accurate.
There was a whole,
But yeah, a lot of it.
Say there was a whole.
A lot of it looks solidly HTC inspired, and so. But I mean, it's going to come down to price, and with the OnePlus models, that's what it's going to come down to. It has to be in that actually, I forget what was the OnePlus 2 retailed for. Was that $399?
I actually can't remember just because I can never remember what the pricing differences are between the different storage.
OnePlus 2 was $389 for the 64 gig.
$389. Okay, so yeah, it's got to be in that same neighborhood for it to be really, compelling as a flagship killer. But yeah, it looks nice specifications wise, and did it say the minimum internal storage is going to be 64 gigabytes? That's pretty awesome.
I believe, 64 gigs. That's just the one that was sent to Tenna. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, okay,
so we still don't have final confirmation on pricing, availability, all that fun stuff.
Sure.
It's going to be revealed soon because apparently one of the other sales reps for OnePlus leaked when their announcement was going to be.
Yeah.
But we've seen. I've had this theory for a while that it sort of takes around 3 generations of a product for a company to start being taken seriously. I was not a huge fan of the first OnePlus One, especially with all of the QA issues that seem to go into manufacturing that device. The OnePlus 2, I was a little cranky about omissions like NFC, and now it seems like we're kind of getting back on track here with the OnePlus 3. But I have to question, like, in a market where fashion, design, aesthetics, lifestyle play such a significant role in how emotional a smartphone purchase is, does OnePlus win themselves any favors when people could take a look at something like an HTC 10? I know the HTC 10 is going to be more expensive, but you look at that versus this kind of a device. Isn't this still just serving the same community of Android enthusiasts? I don't feel like this is a device that finds broader appeal.
Better HTC One A9 as opposed to an HTC 10. And when we talk about that, I think we're comparing different price brackets.
Oh, we absolutely are. But what I mean is, like, your general consumer, when they start looking at...
Or we're comparing the same price bracket that it would be if it were that HTC decided to sell it for $399.
Right,
which we all know that the A9 was probably a touch overpriced for what it offered. But that's also kind of what I was... what I'm kind of getting to is when consumers are checking out flagship phones, high-end phones, a OnePlus 3 is not going to be on store shelves, right? You're not going to see those at an AT&T store. You're not going to
see them in virtual space.
So
it'll be everywhere.
Now that OnePlus has shown dedication to this market, they've shown consistency in this market. We're on their 3rd generation of product releases. What really holds them back from finding a broader appeal or a larger community of people to check out their products?
Oppo?
Oppo shut them down. Okay, I stopped you guys, so we don't have to stay on that any longer. But it's still, we're going into our 3rd year of talking about the flagship killer, and I still wonder, who benefits or who's able to find this product.
We're still debating about this whole OnePlus Oppo connection and whether or not, if this is just their online venture that they want to be, quirky and unique in, or if OnePlus is, in fact, operating under their own volition. That, they just can't make up enough clout within their own market. And then, they wouldn't be able to expand to like physical retail in their market, and then expand to maybe possibly international retail. Like, they just don't have that kind of grip. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that needs to be addressed, and if from some of the rumors have suggested that the invite system for purchasing the phone is going to be gone for good, and if that's the case, then
doesn't that help a lot?
I'm sorry?
I was like, doesn't that help a lot?
Oh, that'll help a ton. So if they can get rid of that, I think that would definitely help legitimize the product.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Seriously, I mean, it's that whole thing that just it felt chintzy just from the start of it, and I understand the reasons behind it, but just like Pebble, it's time to sit at the big boys' table. And stop doing these, chintzy feeling type sales gimmicks, and just put the phone out there, let it stand on its own merits. Getting good with some outlets like Pocketnow.com to get some review devices in hands early, so that there can be a lot of buzz when the phone actually launches, and just let's play the game like everybody else does.
Yep. We all want these OEMs to be more straightforward with us and not encase their little devices in glam and sparkles. But
right.
I mean, you
mean you're not a fan of like Swarovski crystal designs? We just got a message from Panzer Z in the Q&A. A nice product that isn't available for purchase is always a hindrance once the hype is gone. And like, truer words, because like, even if someone does find out about a OnePlus, if there's an invite system, that most consumers are going to go, nah, no, I can go buy something now. I don't want to sit around and wait for a device.
Yeah, go over to Best Buy. Come on.
Right.
And so then also from Kyle Ruggles, comment about design. Not that thrilled by the OnePlus 3. They're looking too much alike now. HTC, anyone? Antenna line design is blah. So I find this interesting because there are like some people that would like really praise certain types of design and smartphone language, and then there are other people that are like antenna lines. That's terrible. I've never understood like that sort of split in what makes for good aesthetics outside of that whole beauty is in the eye of the beholder argument.
No, I think that's it. I think it is just beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I mean,
I think it's just we're looking at one and the same, and we don't like the same. Be unique. Come on, get your game together.
But one phone that actually does. I mean, getting away from the whole aesthetics thing, the one phone that I'm actually kind of looking forward to, like, because it is pretty attractive looking, is the ZTE Axon 7.
And that's the next phone we're going to talk about.
Oh my God!
Finally, a comment of yours for transitioning, Adam.
How about that?
You know what? Hey, how about this? Little applause for that little transition.
But we're not talking about Lenovo. We're talking about the ZTE.
Oh, I ordered these wrong.
Oh. Producer fail. That's all right.
Hold on. Ready?
Everyone send your angry Jules Wang hate mail to... No, don't do that. He's doing
to Jules at pocketnow.com.
Yeah.
So we've got the ZTE Axon 7. And our own Jaime Rivera is in China right now as we speak. He just produced a short hands-on video checking out some of the features. There's some really cool tech on board here. Those front-firing speakers look delicious, especially for folks who were... maybe not on board HTC's current boom sound experiment. These might fulfill that gap. And then also it was kind of interested to see that this is using a Samsung camera sensor. It's using an ISO cell. So it could be really interesting camera performance there, and a step away from the current Sony domination of camera sensors on smartphones. But from having watched Jaime's video and seeing what we're going to be doing for expanded coverage and talking about the fingerprint sensor and all the accessories that come with it, what did you guys think about that initial first impression? Like ZTE may be making a bigger splash with Western audiences.
Oh, it's a phone of excess. I mean, we're talking about 20 megapixel camera when everyone else is shrinking back and improving on their low light performance, supposedly. But
supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. But we have this huge AMOLED panel. We have dual front-firing speakers that are Dolby enhanced, and there are 2 dedicated chipsets for hi-fi, and it's just there's a whole lot going for the hardware, and there's also supposedly Daydream compatibility. Yeah, so I mean, when we're talking about future forward, it feels like this is the phone that's dividing the spring flagships from the fall flagships. And I commend ZTE for making the first step.
Oh yeah, and I just looking at the whole screen to bezel ratio. I mean, there's like no wasted space on this thing. Actually, that's almost kind of a detriment because that front-facing camera sitting in the middle of that speaker grill, not a fan of that. I'll be honest. At least without some type of balancing mark on the other side, but I mean it's one of the quote unquote downsides of having this much screen to bezel ratio. Which I mean, this thing it just looks massive, just because there's practically nothing on either side. It's just this gigantic screen and 2 little speakers, and that's it.
It's a hefty phone too. I mean, we're talking about what 8 millimeters thickness and edging up towards that 200 gram mark.
I bet that feels real good, though.
Yeah.
I bet that feels really great.
Unibody aluminum, like we're ever tired about.
I've never been a huge fan of having the lightest possible phone. I don't like that wafer, plasticky, lightweight feeling. I kind of like a phone that feels not rugged. I mean, well, I do like rugged phones too for specific purposes, but I kind of like that vibe. Like this feels substantial. It feels well built.
Yeah.
Like
the HTC 10. I get that feeling from it. Totally. It's just every time I pick that up, I'm just like, man, this feels so good. And it's not. It's not the lightest.
No, it's not the lightest. It's not the thinnest, but it's well proportioned, well balanced, and it feels right in the hand. And I think that that's an important distinction to make between just sort of a heavy device and a
And
well
just so you know, I have the original Axon in my presence here, and based on that, I can tell you that the software is pretty decent. It's just close to stock even, so there's really not much to complain about about a Chinese manufacturer doing its thing here. So I mean, you have to really be nitpicking here, at least from far away. We haven't gotten our hands on it, so I mean, I may have it. But.
Well, and I've been excited to see some of the things he was talking about, like going back to your point, Jules, about the software. That this is going to be, a Chinese device that doesn't just mimic the iPhone. It's been one of my biggest complaints with Huawei's is they get rid of the app drawer, and your notification shade has that split toggle vertically, just like iPhones have. And like if I want to buy an iPhone, I'll go buy an iPhone. So I mean, I'm really happy to see a more traditional home screen app drawer layout on a Chinese manufactured device. Really happy to see that this is another company that's taking the fingerprint sensor seriously, that this is supposedly wicked fast performance for a fingerprint sensor. And then really, I think the only question is going to be, one, is ZTE capable of producing this for Western audiences quickly so that it doesn't kind of get lost in the shuffle on other phone releases? And two, how much do we think this thing's going to be once it starts landing in Europe and in North America?
Well, Jaime said sub 500, and well, they put up an ad in the Wall Street Journal, so we do expect this to come along. We just haven't had any inkling about it. And that's, I mean, wouldn't it suck if if everything changed from, crossing the Pacific? It's just...
Well, I mean, that's happened to a bunch of us. I mean, we get burned, not burned, that's a little too strong. But, when Sony delivered Z phones to the United States, we lost out on fingerprint sensors. Now, I know that the Z phones were having some issues with the implementation on their first fingerprint sensor, but still, like, parts were carved out of that phone. And that also happens in reverse, where companies like HTC will put in lower spec processors on certain models of their phones for different markets just to kind of help with costs. So
they put in a 652 in the Chinese HTC 10, and that only got 251 pre-orders. At least from the 11th day out. So
well, that would not look good on Kickstarter.
Yeah, no, that would absolutely not break any Kickstarter sales records. No headlines there at all. So really, an impressive offering, especially from a company that I think here in the United States, ZTE is isn't it more associated with like MVNO players and less expensive devices? If something like this started popping up to handily undercut phones like the Galaxy S7 and the LG G5, does this create enough word of mouth that consumers might actually start looking at some of these other companies as options? I think Huawei is starting to build some name recognition in the United States. I think ZTE has a killer offering on their hands here, provided it doesn't have any catastrophic flaws that we can't until we review it. Isn't the only thing holding these companies back just advertising at this point?
I think that would be about that. That is about it. I mean, that's where Samsung is,
dominating.
It's absolutely dominated. So, and I think in this case, ZTE definitely has an attractive enough product that it would back up the advertising that would come along with it. So, absolutely, I want to see them get out there and get there. Start. So let's start putting some ZTE phones in the hands of. Not 90210, Hawaii 5.0 crew, and 90210. Wow.
Aren't those shows still using Windows phones?
Probably.
I think the last time I fired up an episode of Hawaii 5.0, everyone was on Lumias, and it just made me so sad.
I know.
Oh, what could have been?
And I still whip out that Surface and put it on the hood of the car.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Real quick, go ahead, Jules. I'm just going to fire this up in the Q&A.
No, yeah, I was about to. Were you going to do Evan Adams' question?
Oh no, real quick, I was just going to detail Panzer Z writes, what we need is a refreshed version of the Samsung Captivate. A steel back with removable battery, aluminum glass is so played out. That's so 2000 and late.
Oh.
2000 and blah.
So which one did you want to talk about?
Yeah, Evan Adams, who was asking about software updates, and he's considering an HTC 10 because of those updates. Yeah, they do have this thing called the Axon Passport program, where it's a whole bunch of services. It's just like HTC Uh-oh. They also provide a first screen replacement for free, and there's a whole bunch of extended warranty kind of thing going on there.
And hopefully across the industry, we see manufacturers picking up some of the slack on offering updates for their devices. We're going to be talking about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to switch gears here.
I got my update in March, by the way, Marshmallow. So, yeah,
that's actually not too bad considering
it's not too bad. Middle of the pack.
Android 6. But we do want to switch gears here. We're going to talk about Motorola. Moto and Lenovo, we got some sales numbers coming from those two companies, and it's not looking super rosy. The first year of this partnership between these two manufacturers, that Moto is failing to generate sales, that it's not really moving the market, and that these devices don't seem to be appealing. And kind of curious what your guys' take on Motorola's current position might be.
Well, here's the thing, and I am not a business expert by any stretch of the imagination. But here's how I see it. Lenovo picked up a company in Motorola that was having trouble sustaining itself, and now they're surprised when Motorola is having trouble sustaining itself. I hate to draw this parallel, so forgive me, audience, but when HP bought Palm, it's not like Palm was really burning up the cards, and so HP. I mean, I literally think that there was a board meeting when HP said, "Well, we'll just pick up Palm, we'll put an HP sticker on it, and people will buy it because it says HP, right? That's how it works, right?"
And then fire sale.
And it's almost like Lenovo and Moto are doing the same thing. Lenovo's like, "Oh, well, we'll just take this company and we'll put a Lenovo sticker on it, and people will buy it because it's Lenovo, right? We've got all these great laptops. People love our phones.
They don't know what sticker to put on it. That's the problem.
Well, that's another problem too. But it always surprises me when big companies buy these other companies that are not, I don't want to say failing per se, but not doing all that great, and then they're like, "Oh my God, this isn't doing all that great. What's happened? I don't get it." So it's just everybody. I guess all these companies think they can be the white knight to charge in and I'll rescue you, and then their horse breaks a leg on the way in, and now they're stuck in the fire too, and
or they didn't realize that their horse already had broken legs before they even jumped on it. Now,
right.
That might be a little harsh for Motorola. If I was looking at those numbers as we were scrolling by, 11 million devices and somewhere around 5 million of them were contributed from Motorola.
Right, which is almost 50%. I don't see how that's bad.
Well, and also, I mean, that in terms of sale numbers, those are a little surprising when we were seeing a Motorola that was building some momentum. So Motorola was having difficulties as their own company under Google's tutelage. We got some killer devices. We got that first push into those great Moto Gs. The Moto X2 is still a beautiful phone. That is still an eminently usable phone today. And then when Google and Moto parted ways, Google kept kind of all the good R&D stuff. And then Lenovo got sort of the main phone business that was sort of just servicing the current market today. I find it, I was talking briefly about sort of my 3-year strategy. We were just into that territory where Motorola was building momentum, was being taken more seriously, had great connections with Google and the Android development team. And we're making some killer devices, near stock devices, just beautiful execution on all of these phones. And don't consumers sort of pump the brakes when we see a major shift in ownership like that?
Sure.
So doesn't that mean we got to have to start from scratch not from scratch, but we have to start over and kind of rebuilding that momentum. We've got to see compelling devices come from Lenovo Moto, and then we can start looking at Motorola as a serious competitor again. If Lenovo as a Chinese company is in this for the long term, I would expect that they probably foresaw some kind of dip after the first year of devices. I mean, it's difficult for me to imagine a scenario where sales would just have continued to grow, right?
Right. Oh,
Or am I being
absolutely.
too rational?
Well, and I also want to pump the brakes myself and say, my explanation of it is way oversimplified. So, please, nobody put stock in that. And I don't want to see this on the internet, on Twitter later, saying, "Well, Adam said this." No, okay, it's way oversimplified. So, don't get me wrong. I am not an expert. Don't pretend to be an expert.
It's not like Lenovo, even like. They had great sales beforehand in their domestic market, but they've just been beaten down by Huawei, by Xiaomi, by Meizu, everyone else. And, that took them from top 5 manufacturer down to whereversville. So it's not just Motorola's fault here.
No, it's not. And I also want to, point out that there's also a tone that I don't think that the article necessarily reflects. There's probably a tone to Lenovo's expectations for what Motorola was going to, or Moto was going to bring. So, I mean, if Lenovo went into this thinking, oh, we're going to, quadruple our revenue in the first year, then obviously expectations were not set right. But if Lenovo is making this announcement, didn't have as many sales as we kind of liked, but no big deal. Then we just move on and we move into year 2 of the building reputation, and hopefully by next year we can have the 2014 Moto X.
Hopefully this acquisition doesn't mean lights out for the company, right, Juan?
No, I don't think that's going to be the case, especially as we've got that event coming up on June 9th. And so I'm actually going to be flying up to San Francisco to cover that. We've got a couple comments here in the Q&A about this. Motorola is sort of a sweetheart company for a number of people in our audience. So we've got from tigerbait.com, address the Moto X leaks with the 3 modular attachments we've seen. I mean, we've talked about that on previous episodes of the podcast, that Motorola might have a better take on a modular phone than what we've seen from LG. So we're definitely going to be looking into that. And then also just sort of the rumors that are kind of floating around on Moto Z as to whether or not that's going to be a new ultra flagship tier, which is kind of funny watching these companies trade positions as we are looking at a Sony X line coming out to replace the Xperia Z, and we could be looking at some kind of Moto Z to supersede the Moto X. Just like we were saying with 1s and 7s, we kind of need to find some other letters or symbols or something to talk about smartphones, because they're
Charlie.
Yeah,
I think we need Delta.
I think we need Moto Feathers. I think that's going to be our next big thing. We'll have feathers and plaster. Those will be the two mid-tier and flagship.
It should be that place in Wales that's like, London going go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's next.
That
so
36
get on that
character town name.
Get on that one.
And once those phones arrive, we can all count on much better upgrade and software support, because Google is going to start shaming manufacturers that don't update their devices in a timely fashion. And I think we're all really happy to see this coming down the pipe, because something needs to change in Android land, and Google's really the only company that can exert pressure on all of these various manufacturers to stay on top of security exploits and for newer features that are going to be coming to our mobile phones.
Yeah, and it's also, and it should be mentioned that right now this list of manufacturers is internal. It's something that's being passed around the company, and it's not external right now. So there's not a lot of public shame going on right now. Whether or not that changes, it remains to be seen. But it would be really nice if Google could start pointing fingers, just not only from a fragmentation standpoint, but also just from a consumer standpoint. If there was an official list of manufacturers and how they're keeping up with updates, I think that would actually help from a consumer standpoint. Be like, hey, I'm gonna go pick up this new blah blah phone, and then you look at this list and they're like way down, and you're like, oh well, if I don't have the latest software, then the phone's gonna be susceptible to, or it's going to be vulnerable to various security flaws. So maybe I should think about picking up something else. And I think it's going to be great for consumers, and it's going to be great for geeks, and it's probably going to be good for Google as well, because OEMs will want to move up that list.
Well,
Well,
I
and
think
don't we
that
see? Sorry, Jules, real quick. Don't we see like every website, Pocketnow.com included, we all try to put out lists of who did a good job of updating their devices this year, and it's really difficult tracking down that kind of information.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that we've got to sift through for when updates were applied and when they were actually released, and then you usually have some kind of tiered release where 20 people get them day of, and then the rest of the audience gets them like a month later. That happened to me on Windows phones. In trying to tabulate all that information, who would know better than Google? So I completely agree. I'm absolutely hoping that we see this list made public, just like with Netflix ranking ISPs for network performance. This is absolutely information that transcends geek and norm. I think everyone would want to know my device is getting supported. The company has a great track record of applying security fixes and bug fixes. I feel confident in continuing to give them money for products and services. I'm sorry, Jules, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say that we should be differentiating, as Panzer C points out, I believe, difference between security patch updates and major point feature updates.
Oh, absolutely.
And, because point feature updates, when we're talking about Play Store apps, most of them, hey, Android 4.4, you're good, you're fine. And just the compatibility of those features works out fine. Samsung has been good, I believe, on the security patches, not so much on the point upgrades. But LG has been, I think, the antithesis.
Antithesis.
Antithesis to that. I've seen pretty early LG upgrades for the G4.
No, that's actually a great point from Panzer Z2. Because, sorry, excuse me. No, that's a great point in that I think we're all sort of accustomed to the idea that smartphones are maybe going to get 2 years of major support for new releases on operating systems. But we have seen, a tremendous sort of oversight for all of the devices that are floating out there in the Android ecosystem that don't even receive security updates or bug fixes anymore. When we see when we see usage numbers, and the Galaxy S3 is still a crazy popular phone around the world, that's a phone that will never properly be upgraded against the current generation of exploits and security holes, and that's a very unhappy situation to be in on such a major smartphone platform. It's kind of like all of the zombie Windows XP machines that are still out there, infected with God knows what. We're kind of creating a similar situation in Android land when we look at the worldwide community.
What we need is less latency, just like the latency on my internet connection right now.
Mine too.
Yeah.
It's great. Thanks, Google Hangouts. So, moving right along, Google shaming, yes, make it public. We all want to know. Everyone
Google
wants
for
to know.
Hangouts.
Do it. Just do it. In another shameful turn of events, for fans of phones that are smaller or niche platforms, PayPal is making a little bit of public news today that their app is saying adios to Windows Phone, BlackBerry OS, and the Amazon Fire Phone. So for the 10 people that were still on the Amazon Fire Phone, you can no longer make your PayPal purchases off of that device.
Yep. You can no longer buy your eBay purchases on your Amazon phone.
Well, really, if you have the Fire Phone, you should just be buying everything from Amazon anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably true. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and like you said, it's niche type products. I would say Amazon's far more niche than Windows and BlackBerry, but at the same time, and what do they say? They had to properly devote their resources to devices that have
and creating
users.
the very best experiences for our customers.
As they're very, very diplomatically trying to say, we just want to make apps for iOS and Android.
Yeah, they want to make apps for their 98% of their customers, not the 2%
Right.
of the.
So here's the one thing that I did find kind of curious. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this. It's just sort of sad news for people that are still on those platforms. But would there be any benefit for PayPal making a universal Windows app? Or for most of the transactions that people engage with on the various Windows 10 platforms, is the web browser good enough to handle your PayPaling there?
I'm not sure what kind of experience you would get in terms of a PayPal app. I mean, if you were browsing with your Chrome app and you encountered something with PayPal, I mean, would that redirect the whole interactions and the whole feature set? I just wouldn't be clear on that.
Introducing instant apps by. Oh wait, no.
No, that was last week.
I mean, I use the web browser for all of my PayPal transactions. I will occasionally look at the app while I'm out on the go, but I mean, for the most part, if I'm doing something with PayPal, I'm sitting down at a computer and doing it. But that's just my usage. So
I was really racking my brain. I couldn't come up with like a usage-specific scenario where on my laptop, on my Windows 10 tablet, on my Windows 10 desktop, where having a Windows 10 PayPal app would have provided me
a better experience.
Or even just like a comparable one.
Well,
like I almost always have a web browser up, leaving the browser to open an app.
I would think
that one step was making me like, oh, but I don't want to do that. I already have a browser up.
But at the same time, if you have like an app where you're always logged in, maybe that would be nice. As opposed to having to enter a username and a password. But yeah, that's about it. That pretty much.
Well, they introduced that in this update.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So it's just So it sucks, but it's the reality of the situation.
Yep. So unfortunately for you folks on those other third-party platforms, I have to imagine that Symbian users and WebOS users are likely able to commiserate with you guys, but sadly, PayPal on those platforms will be no more.
Unless, of course, we go to court. Unless we go to court and we force all app developers to develop for all platforms, like BlackBerry at one point.
John Chen.
Do you think you could pull that off? I'd be curious to see what antitrust might be for a PayPal app on all platforms. I'm going to invent a Linux-based phone and sell like 3 dev kits, and then demand that PayPal make
a PayPal app. Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned antitrust, so that makes me want to drop Claire for Lonnie's name there. So.
Ooh. Okay.
All right.
I mean, it's not particularly relevant, but we're always down for a good Claire Forlani conversation.
Sure. I'm just going to drop it right there.
So something that is absolutely not Claire Forlani is a story that also got a surprising amount of traffic on Pocketnow.com, and one I really wanted to put you guys on the spot. This is another thing where I'm racking my brain to really get what it is that people are finding exciting about this. I'm really coming across as old man fuddy-duddy Bagnell this week.
That's all right.
This is not the role I like to play. I like to be the more excited guy about technology. But we got this tease from was it from OnePlus?
No, it's from Oppo.
From
it's
Oppo.
A leak.
So that they have apparently been working for months on a foldable phone, and that this device, again, I don't understand the benefits of having a phone screen that can fold in half over what traditional phones can offer. Like I'm not quite sure what it is that's so exciting about having a clamshell that folds in half. So I'm sort of tagging you guys, but I'm also hoping that people in the Q&A will drop some comments on
ready for this?
What this might be.
Ready? Here we go.
For it.
Hit us with it, Jules.
It looks cool.
Yes. And it's like it would be like one of those Star Trek communicators where you flip it open and you'd be like, Captain's log started 4835.2.
This is the flip phone that we always have.
And not to mention, when you want to hang up on somebody, it is so much more satisfying to be like, fine, bye, boom, as opposed to just like, fine, bye, beep, click, So, and I think unless they're reinforcing that with Gorilla Glass, that might be a problem.
Well, but that's just it. Is with having some kind of foldable device, there's that can't be a glass display, right?
Yeah, or at least it would have a line down the middle of it, which would be less than optimal. But yeah, I think we just need to have, like in Dungeons and Dragons terms, we need bracers of smartphone, so we can wear them on our arms. Like, by the power of Grayskull, and you can put your arms together, and it'll like flash up a cute cat video, and it'll make thieves run away. I think that would be the ideal use case.
But we've seen a number of like science fiction loves showing us translucent phones like that are like you can see through them, which I've never understood what the big benefit would there be, and some major security issues if someone can look at what you're doing on your phone.
True.
Then also we've also seen like in a number of movies like rollout displays.
Yeah, see, that's what I want. That's what I want. I want a rollout display where it's like in a tube, and if you want to use a phone, you just pull it out a little bit, and you got a phone. And then if you want to watch a movie, then you pull it out a lot, and you've got a big screen TV.
Yeah, instantly scalable displays. You just pinch to zoom.
Yeah, exactly. And you could pull them down from the bottom too, and you can make a 6x4, wall display for your Netflix.
And then you can make a decree. Or 2, or 3,
and you
or 4.
You could make a decree, or possibly a proclamation if you should be so inclined. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really all that looking forward to foldable phones, but I mean the scroll ones I could see being a lot more compelling. So, and it's also another thing to consider is not just foldable, but also just a bendable display. Various other form factors where you could actually put like a smartphone like display. Not saying it's going to be a smartphone. And I think we've all said that if iOS and Android are ever going to be offset, it's going to be by something completely new. Yeah, so. Yeah. Maybe we're going to have smart helmets or something in the future. I don't know. But this could very well be like a next generation type product, which is going to usher us in to whatever is going to be the next generation of mobile communications.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
go ahead, Jules. I'll queue up the Q&A while we're.
Yeah, I mean, we have to start using these flexible OLEDs in some way. I mean, we're talking about making them fit to the form of an iPhone, an all-glass iPhone. Maybe have an all-screen iPhone at some point. Yeah, that would require a flexible OLED. So somehow, some way, we have to realize that these components are out in the market, and we should probably start using them somehow.
Well, we've got from Joel GJ, and he writes, no shattering screen when the phone hits the ground. That could be kind of interesting. If the display's already foldable, does that necessarily mean that the device is going to be inherently more rugged or more lifestyle-proof? And then from Kyle Ruggles, we've got clamshells for a tablet, great. For a phone, not so much unless you can quickly use it with one hand. And that's another thing that I kind of look at, like, if your phone is closed, what does that do to affect things like usage? Because, I mean, especially this demo that we've seen from Oppo, that does look like a bulkier device than what we've sort of grown accustomed to on standard phones.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's also, there's definitely but I think it would also make a smartphone smaller. We're pushing for smaller and thinner, and this would definitely bulk up on the thickness. But if the phone is only, say, 4 inches by 3 inches as opposed to 8 inches by 3 inches, I think that would probably be a lot more attractive for pocket writing and whatnot.
So Evan Adams writes, clamshell equals best way for Nintendo to bring the DS to Android. I kind of have to say, like, if I were Nintendo, I would absolutely just be making the next Nintendo DS out of a similar setup. Like,
get on that.
Don't even try and bother competing in the Android space. Just beat phone manufacturers to this type of technology. And I think another portable game console that'll last for a while.
That's great.
Interesting. Right across my Twitter feed, one of our competitors came across with the Google ready to shame partners who don't upgrade Android. Just like, we already got past that one. So
we already mentioned it on the podcast, in fact.
I mean, come on, man.
Fancy. So we're sort of wrapping up with the news here, but before we jump into listener mail and wrapping up some of the other comments in the Q&A, I wanted to take just a second to briefly talk politics. I try and avoid any sort of political deep dives on this show or on this channel, but we recently went through sort of the FBI versus Apple case, and we're gearing up for another fight in Congress over budgets and appropriations spending for the FCC. And so there is currently a bill being offered on spending that is going to cut FCC spending and then severely declaw what the FCC is capable of regulating here in the United States. Now, it is not my job as an editor at Pocketnow to tell you how I think you should support or oppose legislation like this, but what I will ask for the members of our audience here in the United States to seriously consider looking at this bill and then writing your local congressman or congresswoman to voice your support or opposition for this style of spending. I know there are a number of people in our audience that are probably conservatives and libertarians who feel like free market solutions will be the appropriate response to business regulations. And I know that there are going to be people that are in favor of even stricter regulation over our data communication networks and telecommunications industry. And so my plea is for more of us to get involved. I feel as geeks we should be leading the conversation. We should be resources for people in our circle of friends and families and throughout our communities for this kind of information to add to the discussion and to raise the level of discussion. I think what we saw from the FBI versus Apple case was this stuff gets dangerous when the people who really know what's going on are not being listened to. And so that's where I hope we can contribute to this discussion. We can contribute and participate politely with respect to people who might not understand the ramifications of these business moves as well as we do. But I would hope that people in our audience can start leading the conversation more than just joining the conversation, or even just that notion, like I have that knee-jerk reaction where I just want to complain on Twitter. So yesterday, instead of complaining on Twitter, I took my complaint and I drafted a paragraph of text and I sent it to the congressman in my district. And it was the same, roughly the same amount of time as I would have spent on crafting a Facebook post, but it went directly to someone who
can actually do something about it.
Can actually do something. And so in voicing my opinion there, I feel like my time was actually better served than just complaining to the people that I already know agree with me, preaching to the choir of the people who I follow on social media.
Well, yeah, but how many retweets did it get?
0. And actually, you know what? I'm kind of fine with that.
And no likes.
I'm kind of okay with that.
Man.
So for people in the United States, this is coming up, for the 2017 fiscal budget. So I would recommend checking this information out now. For people in other communities around the world, I would still ask that you join in the participation of these tech discussions with your local elected officials, because it's never a good idea to wait for the United States to figure stuff out.
It almost never works out.
It never works out. By the time we've moved on a particular topic, leaders in your area are already in the process of developing the responses to similar situations. When it came to encryption, we saw a flurry of activity in the UK regarding very similar issues in terms of data security and privacy. Waiting for us to figure out what was going on with the FBI Apple case would have been a terrible move in actually drafting policy that will affect us for generations to come. And again, it's never my job to tell you how I think you should vote on these things, but I always ask that you guys, because I know you're smarter or more tech savvy and smarter than the average consumers out there, that you join the conversation, because I think your input will be invaluable for how we move forward on these types of topics and discussions.
I just think you're another part of the liberal media machine.
I'm so torn on a number of these issues because I am a capitalist at heart. I mean, I'm all about hey, if I can be rich, I'm gonna be rich.
Yeah.
But these conversations are so nuanced. And when we leave them up to the media that we have, liberal media or conservative media, they're always way oversimplified. And I really do feel that the majority of Americans who care enough to even tune in are going to understand some of these nuances when they're better presented. And so what tools do we have at our disposal to better disseminate the nuance of a discussion? It's us. we're that tool. We're that resource. We're tools.
Absolutely.
But if we continue to be as cynical as sometimes we've been in the past, or if we continue to take our ball and go home, then our voice doesn't contribute to the discussion, and the discussion is led by people who should probably not be leading that discussion. So that's always my plea to this community: is we can do better. We absolutely can, and I feel we should.
Cool.
Lobby that power.
Love it.
And so let's get to some Q&As just real quick. I mean, the first one that I see here from Evan Adams: Tom Wheeler has been surprisingly less bad than people thought he would be. Yeah, he was a staunch
Comcast lobbyist?
Yes, he was. Thank you. I couldn't find the word lobbyist, and he's actually turned out to be a pretty fairly balanced head for the FCC, chairman for the FCC. Whew. I'm losing words like all over the place here. My brain is ejecting.
That's all right.
What was I had?
Friday.
You're gonna make it. You're gonna make it.
I know, we're so close, so close. Where's the other Q&A? A bunch of people jumped in with stuff. Isn't there some sort of flip phone Motorola is coming out with? Have you guys seen?
They're talking about the Moto Razr little flashback ad. I don't see anything. It just leads to the June 9th date, so Lenovo Tech World, we're going to see that.
Yeah. I haven't heard anything beyond that.
Moto Z.
I'm losing. I thought I had one other Q&A here, but I think we're going to have to move on to
listener mail?
Viewer mail here. I'll get these queued up right now.
We have the bong bong.
Yeah.
Oh, no, the bong bong.
Yeah.
We've got to jump on this right now.
Once the bong bong sounds, it's official.
You want me to get to number one? Or
Yeah, read off number one for me while I cue this back up.
All right, so my favorite person of the day is Mr. Billy Cool.
Billy Cool.
And he writes, I currently own a Galaxy Note 5. I really love great-sounding, high-quality MP3 audio via headphone jack. My big question is there a big enough reason to switch to the HTC 10 rather than sticking with the Note line based on that alone? I'm due for my annual upgrade in August and would very much appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
So I picked this question specifically because Adam, you've been rocking an HTC 10. What have your impressions been?
I've been rocking it for like a day and a half. So I unfortunately have seemed to have misled you on this. My train ticket is an e-ticket that I keep on my phone, and my Metra is the company
Commuter
that does
Rail, yeah.
Commuter Rail. So they only allow you to move your train ticket to a different device once per month, which for normal people is perfectly fine. But for people like us, it's a stupid problem to have. But I've already had my train ticket on 2 different phones now, so I wasn't able to move it to the HTC, so I had to just not use the HTC for a while. Anyway, so all that aside, I haven't had the chance to listen to any audio, although... I know, right? Although I have it from a reliable source that the audio output quality is sublime. So,
I wonder who that source could have been.
It definitely was not one of our editors who's currently in China. So, definitely not.
Actually, he thought it was pretty good too, though. I mean, he was cranky when I got because they had to send the 10 to me to do the camera review.
Right.
And that's maybe the crankiest I've seen Jaime about an individual phone. He's like, but you're going to send it back to me, right? Where's the case that came with it? Come on, man. What's going on?
But no,
hardware.
So I'm under the impression that the audio quality is wonderful. I can't confirm that, but watch my Twitter feed. I will make sure to do that over the weekend and play some nice high quality audio and come back with a judgment.
I'll be curious to see your thoughts. Now, one of the things, like when we're talking about whether or not we're going to make a phone recommendation for someone else to spend their money, I can't really answer. It's like the Note 5 is a solid performer. I mean, it's really good all around. I don't think it wins any major categories when it comes to audio reproduction, but there aren't any significant deficits that I can find on Note 5 hardware. So it's really tricky when we're talking about a single use case example for us to be able to say, oh yeah, well if that's your thing, then you should totally
that's better. Yeah.
buy this phone, which is only a couple months older than this other phone. or I mean, only a couple months newer than this other phone. So you know, I would be careful because you really want to weigh the sum total of everything that you use a device for. If you ever click the S Pen, well, you need to stick with the Note. Like, there is no other offering that really champions that kind of productivity usage. Cameras are pretty similar, but you still want to look at what it is that you focus on, what it is that you do with your device before moving on. I wanted to bring this one up specifically because of audio, and Adam, you just got your HTC 10. But in general, this is one of the most common questions that we get on this podcast, and at least this one gave us some kind of criteria. Like, I like listening to music, but I can't tell you the number of emails that we get. Hey guys, so I've got a Galaxy S3 that's totally dead, and it's time for me to get a new phone. I'm looking at an HTC 10, LG G5, or a Galaxy S7. What should I buy?
Yeah, and our answer to that question is yes.
Yes.
Yes. Or I mean, maybe I'm going to start saying no.
Yeah, but no, it is good that he did have that specific audio request, and I unfortunately am not qualified to answer it. I will. I've actually got this email in my inbox, so I could even write him a quick audio review once I get that.
I think, yeah.
Great. And because I am a very particular snob about what I enjoy about like headphone audio and speaker audio and camera tech and things like that, loop me in. I'd be very curious to see what your experiences are, just to see if I'm kind of, up my own butt.
I also will say that at the HTC demo where I got the HTC 10, they very much focused on the audio experience from the HTC 10, where there's actually like a setup process that you can go through, and you can actually adjust the equalizer through presumably a user-friendly setup to like just perfectly cater to your audio needs. So I will be doing all of that this weekend. So never fear. But I will CC you as well, Juan. And
then
maybe,
Kyle
maybe it'll be an article. I don't know.
And Kyle Ruggles also writes in, and this might help you out, Mr. Cool. If he's tech savvy, he could root his Note and install Viper for Android. It'll bring new life back into the Note 5 for audio. I'd keep the Note if I was in this position if he needs productivity. So that's also another solution there too, is that maybe the stock software just isn't giving you the right EQ color or the right amp bump that you might be looking for. You can actually tweak some of the sound coming off these devices. Even the Samsung built-in EQ has some interesting features that you can play with to kind of tweak and tailor audio. One of the weird
But I mean, in this case, he's saying he actually likes the audio, so I don't know if he necessarily needs to adjust it. He's just looking for something fresher.
Is he looking for a 7 out of 10 or 9 out of 10?
Oh, God, I can't do ranks. It's like I give it an 11.3 on a scale of 7 to 17 on Wednesdays with full moons. Let's move on to the next viewer email.
Well, I was about to say the only flags I have are of JP, and that makes for a fun experience. But yeah, on my HTC 10, definitely bright, and I'm just loving it.
And,
cool.
and that amp does a great job of driving even more resistive headphones. I didn't say that properly, but people in the chat and on on YouTube comments will correct me for how I just said that.
Yeah, they'll get you.
Yeah. Moving on to our next email. This one comes from Aniko Martin, and Aniko writes, I want to ask regarding the new messaging app from Google, Allo. Why doesn't Google give us Allo features in the form of an update to Hangouts? It would be easier for people to use that feature rather than launching a new app, which is making the user sorry, this is written a little. Making the user giving the user a hassle to move contacts from Hangouts to this. I think at least Google should be consistent with their app. At least I think they should make a button to move contacts from Hangouts to Allo. What do you think about why Google is making this move? So we talked about this a little bit more, in depth in our podcast right after Google I/O. But with a little time, a little distance, Adam, what do you think about this strategy? It seems to me like this is a way around built-in messaging clients. Like this is another split so that they can update this free from carrier and manufacturer influence, but that also means that they're creating another separate piece that consumers need to download on their own.
Well, as I actually tweeted over the weekend, I said, I'm not sure why I'm surprised that Google now has 4 messaging apps, considering they have 2 mapping apps, and how many do you really need? So I think there's making an update to Hangouts would be fine, except I don't want to say lipstick on a pig, except it's just I don't know anybody that actually uses Hangouts. I mean, even even the Nexus phones now have a separate messaging app beyond Hangouts. So I don't necessarily know that Hangouts to Allo is the natural progression here. I don't. If anything, messaging to Allo would make more sense, I would think. As far as like transferring contacts from one to the other, if you're like me, all of your contacts are in Google anyway, so I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. And if your contacts aren't in Google, put them in Google, for God's sakes, because I don't want to have you, one day having to post on Facebook, hey, I lost my phone, so if you could all PM me your phone numbers, that'd be great. I actually wrote an article about that back in December about how to preserve all your stuff in the cloud. So if your contacts aren't in Google, put them in Google. So do that now. Don't even, and then the rest of this conversation becomes somewhat irrelevant. But no, I don't.
Like those posts.
I don't mind. I don't mind the fact that they came out with a new messaging app. I think it's gonna be. I think it'll be fine. I think the people that want it will use it, and I think that people that don't will use something else. I mean, I think that's kind of where we are. There's such a saturation that people are going to use what they want to use. Some people will still use WhatsApp, some people will use Snapchat, some people will use SMS for whatever reason.
Well, and that's actually a great point. Jules, do you think that this might be just Google's way of sort of throwing everything up in the air and seeing what sticks?
I'm going to have to say no, because...
And I'm going to have to ask you why you think that way.
Well... I was so wanting to say yes, but I just don't feel like Google wouldn't do this without having some sort of master strategy, maybe a year down the road or 2 years down the road. And I know that's talking, nonsense times from this point in 2016, but there has to be a way that they tie all these plot threads together, so to speak. Like,
we'll see.
I mean, they have Messenger, they have Hangouts, and they're kind of hinting that they're about to I don't know, separate things once again, and then maybe everything will just blow up.
Well, Google Voice is like the cockroach that'll be left after the nuclear disaster.
I'm still
like one of those things that'll never die.
I posted on Facebook my new Google Voice number, so. Yeah. Hooray.
Well, that's Jules with the vote for tech optimism. Google has to have a plan. I love it.
I want to be different.
No, let's wrap this up with our last viewer mail. This comes from Davor. And Davor's actually been writing a bunch of emails in, and with very funnily threatening email titles if we don't read.
I will taunt you a second time.
So this one has to do with one of our favorite topics. I actually recently produced a video on Pocketnow.com talking about lag. And so Devore writes, Note 5, lag. There have been a few articles about processor speed and lag on Pocketnow. There's been a lot of news regarding the new Note. How does the Note 5 stand up? With the approach of the Note 6 or 7, prices will start to drop on the Note 5. How is it holding up? And we're starting to look at, whether or not we should be producing after the buzz segments for these types of phones. We've got these companies that develop reputations. And Samsung seems to have stuck with this reputation that after a couple months, their devices slow way down. And so I was hoping, especially Adam, you could comment on what some of your experiences have been using devices for longer than just that first week review. But how do we feel about devices aging, lag? Is this a software problem? Is this really like a consumer just accumulates a lot of crap, so all computers will start to slow down over time? Lag is a very divisive topic in our audience.
Yeah. Now I don't have a Note 5, but I have been using the S6 Edge relatively regularly.
Pretty similar hardware, yeah.
Yeah, so relatively similar. And it's actually been my experience that the lag has been, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's been pretty consistent through the through the years. I mean, there were times there, and if you read my review rebuttal, which went up, God, almost a year ago. You know, there's times that the phone starts to kind of stutter, and you just kind of nod to yourself, and you just push through for the next 5 minutes or so until it clears itself up. And that's still the same that we get today. So as far as the Samsung specific lag is concerned, it's better. It's a lot better than older Samsung devices that I've used. But it's still there, and it still rears its head every now and then, but not with any more consistency over the years.
I've been one of these people where I've voiced my opposition to this notion that Samsung specifically seems to have this notion of lag, and all devices will slow down over time. I've noticed one very odd slowdown on my Galaxy S7. So I don't have the S7 Edge, I have the S7, and it's on the fingerprint sensor. So this I've not experienced on any other phone, where on my S7, when I go to hit my thumb at the bottom of the S7, it's now like 1 out of 4. It'll just sit there and look at me. Like it won't actually unlock the device. I'll reposition, and it's not telling me that it's not scanning.
Right.
It just doesn't do it.
Yeah, it's
an iOS feature, so it.
So I can see my notifications.
See instead of that, you just see the time. It's awesome.
No, it's interesting
because the new
because
watch feature.
Yeah, now that I've used the HTC 10 and I've used the 6P, and the fingerprint sensor on the S6 Edge, which was always like really fast for me, now it's just kind of like it is slower. Now I don't know if it's because it's slowing down or if it's because other sensors are just that much faster.
And so like when I started playing with Huawei's, even on like a less expensive Huawei, like those fingerprint sensors are just bulletproof. I really like what they're doing with hardware on all of their phones. The P9 is lightning fast. But this one actually did take me by surprise on the S7, where the S7 was a quick and snappy performer out of the box for the first couple weeks that I was using it, and now when I pick it back up to do like comparisons or when I'm producing other content and I need the S7, that's one thing that really has aged oddly. I can't even say it aged poorly. It's just it's odd that it would affect a hardware component, which seems to not really. I mean, it's not a direct action response to the Android operating system.
Right.
It's how you turn the screen on and unlock the device. And for whatever reason, that's the one area where my S7 has started to exhibit some twitchiness. So I can't speak specifically, unfortunately, Devor, I can't speak specifically to the Note 5 having any particular kind of slowdown.
Ryan St. Andre has one. He's had one from pretty early on, and as far as I know, he's still absolutely enamored with it. So
yeah,
we gotta get him on
I was just going to say from some of the other.
We should get him on the podcast.
He might actually be the email I'm sending out after the show. But from some of the other podcasters that I've done work with and some of the other tech reviewers that I'm friends with, like everyone else who's been kicking on the Note 5 is still going strong as far as I know. Within the normal issues of like, I filled this device to the brim with apps and services and it's running a ton of stuff in the background, you would expect some slowdown in situations like that.
Right. So, cool.
Well, folks,
well, there you go.
I'm proud to say, I think we're going to wrap this show up on time.
Yeah, and I'm actually staying till the end, which almost never happens.
So yeah, Mr. Wang, would you be so kind as to play us out so we can wrap this puppy up?
I just had to start over the music, but because I pressed another button, but there you go. So that's how these things work.
I love it. There it is. So there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly has come and gone. This show is ending, but the conversation continues on Twitter, where you can find Adam as @DeadTechnology. Jules Wang is @PointJules, and I'm humbly @SomeGadgetGuy. Pocketnow is around the web on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, and our home site, pocketnow.com. We're basically everywhere. Shows like this can't exist without your support. Sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology and by dropping some reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever podcast reviews can be left. And if you're watching this on the YouTubes, hit that thumbs up button for a little extra positive reinforcement. You can write to us directly for a chance to have your questions answered live on the air using the email podcast@pocketnow.com. And many thanks to all of the people in the Q&A this week. We saw some really fun discussions bouncing back and forth, and it helps us keep this show fresh. Once again, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Sioeye, with the Iris 4G action camera. Don't forget to use that Pocketnow promo code at checkout to save yourself some cash on a wirelessly enabled action camera of your very own. So Sioeye is helping us keep the lights on, but ultimately there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness, so make sure you check back in.
Such a gorgeous looking phone.